Welcome to topic 10. So, we're going to be talking about forecasting and integrated business planning. So, this is the introduction, and with every new topic, we have a quote. But we have a bonus for you on this one. We have two quotes for you. So, our first quote is, "We futurists have a magic button. We follow every statement about a failed forecast with yet." Have you ever had someone that's done that to you yet, or done that to you? They said, when you say, "Oh, well, you were wrong," well, they just say something like, "Well, I'm just not right yet." I mean, think about it. A psychic, they say, "Oh, you're going to come into a good fortune." Well, they're trying to predict the future. That's what you're kind of doing with a forecast. You're trying to predict the future. And a psychic doesn't put a time frame on that, where the forecast does put a time frame. You're trying to do that. So this is kind of the thing here. You say yet, because you might be right. It's just not right now. So what about our bonus quote here? "The most reliable way to forecast the future is to try to understand the present." Well, of course, we have to understand what's going on now to kind of predict what's going to happen in the future. Like if we took a look at the stock market, well, we do know what's happened in the past, and we can look at what's happening today. We can kind of try to predict what's going to happen in the future. And if we predict correctly, we can make a lot of money in the stock market. If we don't predict correctly, well, we might lose money, we might not make as much money, or we won't make any money. We'll just stay even. So we have to understand what's going on present. Whether there's news coming out of the government, or a major company is about to file for bankruptcy, or release a new product that's going to revolutionize something that we all hate doing. We have to understand what's going on right now in the world. Whether another country is about to do something, or there's going to be a war in some other part of the world, or there's peace on earth because these two countries that have been fighting since everybody doesn't even know when it started are declaring peace. All this information can help us predict the future and forecast that future. Well, let's look at some famous or infamous Christmas toy stockouts. So back in 1975, Pong. So people would wait in line for up to 2 hours to sign up to get on a list to buy Atari Pong. They stood in 2 hour lines to get on the list, not to get one, just to get on the list. Atari forecasted that there would be a demand of 50,000 units, but they sold 150,000 units. Well, their forecast was a little off, wouldn't you say? Cabbage Patch Kids in 1983. Riots broke out in store. A store owner said they knocked over tables, fighting with each other. It got ugly. Well, the manufacturer underestimated demand, and there was long shipping lead times from China, where it was manufactured. Tickle Me Elmo. Some of you might know of this one. Supply was so scarce, people were selling the $30 doll for $1,500 on websites such as eBay, and just kind of like backroom deals for $1,500. It's such a popular toy. Tyco underestimated demand. So Elmo, if you're not familiar, is a Sesame Street character. He's the red guy, I believe. Furby, 1998. $35 must-have toy inspired fighting among parents and sold for over $300 in newspapers, despite production over 1.8 million units. So Tiger Electronics underestimated demand. Now, these Furbies, you can put two of them facing each other and they would talk to each other in their own language or make some noises at each other. So they were kind of interactive, and they were pretty interesting. PlayStation 3. So back in 2005, they pre-sold thousands of PlayStation 3s. But this still inspired shoppers to camp out in front of stores. and led to gun violence. And what led to all this was there was part shortages. So people would pre-buy these things from the retailers, but the retailers did not have enough, even though the customer pre-bought the product. So how do you determine who gets the PlayStation 3? That led to violence. So it all led to part shortages that limited the production. Then you have Juju Pets in 2009. So a $9 toy was selling for $60 a piece during this time. Now this is the same company as the Cabbage Patch Kids in 1983. You think they might have learned their lesson from 1983, but no, they didn't. So they underestimated demand again, and long shipping lead times from China. The same two reasons from 1983. This is unfortunate. So these are all stockouts, where there is not enough inventory to meet demand and sales. So what are some trade-offs that happen between stockouts and overstock, where you have too much inventory? Well, you have costs associated with stockouts, of course. You lose revenue because how much money could you have sold, or how much money could you have brought in if you had the product to sell? You also lose goodwill and reputation. Goodwill and reputation. So if your customer can't get a hold of your product, they're going to they might start thinking badly about your company, and your reputation of your company might start going down in their eyes. This is the customer's point of view. Follow-on business. Does your customer leave your brand and go on to another brand because they feel that brand is more reliable? For example, if you like Chick-fil-A, for example, but Chick-fil-A is always out of your favorite item, well, might you want to perhaps go to McDonald's or Burger King to see if they have something that you like? So that would be part of this losing that follow-on business, because you're going to go to a more reliable partner or a more reliable business. So these are all associated with stockouts. But there's also costs associated with overstock, having too much. So you have opportunity costs. So by having too much inventory, you don't have money to spend in other areas. So your money is tied up, and you can't spend it on something else. You might have been able to produce more of another product, but you can't because your money was used producing a different product. Holding cost. It costs money to have something sitting on the shelf. It costs money to have inventory. It's that simple. You're holding onto the product, and it's costing you money. There's actually formulas to figure out how much holding costs are. And then finally, you have markdown and disposal costs. Markdowns, sales, clearances, liquidation. Disposal costs, usually liquidation or just throwing the thing out or donating it to Goodwill or Salvation Army or whatever you do with it. You're disposing of it. You no longer have ownership of it. So it's going to cost money to do these things. Yes, some methods cost more than others, but you're not getting the full retail value you might have gotten for it. So don't pass up like the clearance shelf at Walmart or any of these other stores, Target, because you might be able to get some good deals. For example, Target will mark something down up to 70%. That might be something you're interested in. I think Walmart will mark something down up to 50% before they send it off for liquidation. Other stores do different things. So take a look at these. Don't just pass by the clearance just because it's marked clearance. You might find something interesting that you would need or want. All right, so let's look at forecasting. So forecasting product development here. So Airbus and Boeing were thinking about making bigger aircraft. Airbus came out with the A380 aircraft, which is basically a super airplane. It's huge. It holds a lot of people, and it's one of the largest aircrafts out there. However, Boeing was also considering creating one of these planes also. But Boeing did their forecast and estimated that demand for this aircraft would be roughly 325, I believe our book says. And Airbus already came out with one. And as you can see on our chart here, Airbus already sold up until 2007 through 2017, 331. So Boeing's estimate was actually pretty close. But Boeing decided instead of competing with Airbus, they were going to design the 787 Dreamliner. And why did they go that way? Well, they were looking at the market, and they decided that they were going to go the more efficient route, the efficiency route with airplanes. And that's where the 787 came from. It was the 7 Echo 7 was the original designation, and then it became the Dreamliner, and then it was rebranded or remarked as the 787. And because of the more efficient features of this aircraft, which saved fuel, which was one of the biggest expense of operating an aircraft, they sold almost 1,300 aircraft when Airbus sold 1,000 less, 331. So just by taking a look at the market, knowing the present, you can make a better forecast. And you can sell, in this case, 1,000 more aircraft just by knowing the present and knowing where things are going. So what's this to say? I mean, Boeing could have competed with Airbus, and they would have sold, let's say, half. Half could have gone to Airbus, half could have gone to Boeing. But neither company would have really flourished, right? But when it comes down to it, we need to look at the inventory. So we need to get our inventory right. So when we look at it, we have three questions. We need to look at, what does an effective and a responsive order fulfillment system look like? This is part of our forecast, because if we know how fast we can fulfill an order, that helps us develop our forecast. How can you effectively coordinate order management across intra and inter-firm decision makers? So this is like your company or within your company and your suppliers. If you can coordinate that order management as a supply chain professional, your forecasts can have a little bit more error because you're able to recover from those errors much more quickly. Now, of course, your forecast, you want it to be as accurate as it can be, but realize your forecast will never be 100% accurate. You'd be lucky if it was 90% accurate. And then our final question here. How can you improve the quality of your forecasts? Think about all the variables that go into developing a forecast. Are they weighted properly? Are they factoring everything you need? All of these things that you can think of. Ask other people. Don't just rely on your own intuition and guesswork or expertise. Ask other people, because no one person can come up with all the answers. And while you have one point of view, you are kind of limited, as we all are, by our past experiences and our education and how we do things. But if you ask somebody else, they have different experiences, different education, different ways of doing things. So they're going to think differently. They may have the idea that you need to make that accuracy maybe 10% more accurate. And 10% can go a long way. Even if it's just 1%, that's a great increase. But this is just an overview of forecasting and integrated business planning. So let's dive more into it, because forecasting can be used in almost every industry. If you're in hospitality, if you're in management information systems, it doesn't matter. Forecasting is extremely useful in the world today. So let's dive into the forecasting process in our next video.